Asdivine Hearts. It looks like a stereotypical JRPG and is available on almost everything. Specifically what I'm playing on is the Wii U, and that version of the game was released in North America on April 7th, 2016. However, from what I can tell, the game first dropped on phones and the 3DS in 2014. I bought this game because it looked like your regular everyday JRPG. Now, it's time to find out if what you see is what you get with this game. Hello there, I'm Quinma, and this is my review for Asdivine Hearts. I actually don't have a history section for this review, so let's just fast forward to the story summary and review section. If you don't want to see any of that because of spoilers, then you can jump to the time on screen to skip to the gameplay section. The world of Asdivine is protected by both the light deity and the shadow deity. However, 1 year prior to the main plot, there was a blaring light that crossed the sky, causing the wildlife to go berserk. Eventually, the light faded and life returned to normal, with people largely forgetting the event despite it only taking place 1 year prior. Now in the present, the light deity is on the run from the shadow deity. The monsters sent after her have greatly damaged the deity and she needs to find a body to possess or perish. Meanwhile, at the Galaxia orphanage, two of the orphans, Zach and Stella, are preparing to enter Ligo Woods in order to return a wildcat back to its natural habitat. After some light flirting between the two heroes, and some teasing from the head of the orphanage, Shannon Heimert, Zach and Stella head off. In the Ligo Woods, Zach and Stella have a chance encounter with the runaway light deity. Sensing a great amount of magic coming from Zach, the light deity prepares to possess his body. However, when she attacks, the wildcat jumps in the way. In turn, the light deity ends up possessing the cat's body instead. Zach and Stella do not believe that the being who overtook the cat's body is the deity, so they decide to take the cat back to Galaxia orphanage to see if Shannon has any ideas on what to do. Before leaving, Stella decides to name the now talking cat Felix, though the light deity despises this name. After returning to the orphanage and explaining the situation to Shannon, she suggests going to the high priestess in the city to confirm if Felix really is the light deity or not. The next day, after saying their goodbyes, Zach, Stella, and Felix head off on their new adventure. As they travel, Zach tries to protect Felix. The latter is very confused as to why humans would act like that, but Zach and Stella attest that the cat Felix is possessing is their pet, so of course they would protect him. Upon hearing that, Felix decides to join the heroes in fighting against the bad guys. Thus, Felix properly joins the party. When they reach the end of the woods, they come across a monster that can talk. The light deity explains that the mild lizard was created by the shadow deity, which is why it was stronger than normal. This greatly confuses Zach and Stella because their understanding is that the light deity and shadow deity are friends who created the world together. The light deity contemplates on explaining why the shadow deity is after her, but decides against it. The heroes arrive in Orcus village, where a strange girl starts spying on them, but Zach and the others decide to ignore her. After all, when they entered the village, they encountered a villager who tells them that a boy named Clint was taken away by the wild monsters. Zach concludes that the monsters must have taken the boy to Brorston Cave. Then the village chief also states that there is a rock slide in the mountains between the village and the capital, so they can't even ask any soldiers for help. Without hesitation, Zach and Stella offer to help. The girl who is spying on the group then appears. She introduces herself as Uriel. Uriel claims Zach had saved her village 2 years ago. Both Zach and Stella argue that Uriel have the wrong person, as Zach never did such a thing. Uriel is adamant though that Zach was the one who saved her, and she wants to repay his kindness. So, after some arguing, Zach, Stella, and Felix leave on their own to Brorston Cave. After the short trek, the group arrives at the cave. To their surprise, Uriel had secretly followed them. She is very determined to help Zach in any way possible. Felix notes that she senses a great powerful magic within Uriel. So, despite Stella's complaints, Zach and Felix decide to invite Uriel to join the party. The heroes quickly find Clint, and while Clint is happy to see the heroes, there is someone else who is as well. Another monster sent by the shadow deity. The match against the boss is surprisingly difficult, but nothing that Zach and the others can't handle. After defeating the Brorston ogre, both Uriel and Clint question Felix, like, how can this cat be talking? But Zach quickly covers this by stating that Stella, as a monster trainer in training, has been teaching Felix how to talk. Anyhow, the group make their way back to Orcus village. In the village, Clint is quickly reunited with his friends and family. Quinn's mother thanks the light deity and Felix starts to feel stronger. After the villagers leave, Felix explains to the others that the gods get their strength from faith. The more people who believe in them, the stronger they get. After that exchange, they all head off for a good night's sleep at the inn. In the morning, Zack, Stella, and Felix prepare to separate from Uriel. However, Uriel refuses to separate from Zack. She goes on to reveal that she is the only survivor of her village, so she has nowhere to return to. Stella comes up with an excuse for Uriel to continue with them. She could go to a guild in the capital and get a job there. With that settled, the heroes set off for Gutenberg City. After some light traveling, they find themselves in the capital. Upon seeing the castle, Uriel is greatly surprised. She thought castles only existed in fairy tales. Hearing this, though, causes surprise in the others, as a kingdom having a castle is common knowledge, and even those living in the self-governed state should know something like that. Regardless, the group make their way to the castle. Upon reaching the castle, though, the guards become quite suspicious. As Zack is reaching for the letter of introduction, the guards assume he's reaching for his sword, and so they arrest Zack and Stella. After Felix runs away, the guards assure Uriel that she's safe now. Zack and Stella don't spend too much time in prison, though, as a guard comes to free them and take them to see the queen. Upon meeting Queen Gloria, she explains that there is a misunderstanding and questions why Shannon wanted them to meet. That's when Felix re-enters the picture. The high priestess, Celine, recognizes Felix as the light deity without any introductions. The heroes are shocked that Felix was telling the truth. Felix further explains her situation. The light deity and shadow deity had gone along perfectly fine up in the land of the gods, Eternia. They maintained the balance of the world they created. However, one day, the shadow deity wanted the people to praise him more and more. Since this would upset the delicate balance, the light deity disagreed. This fight resulted in the light deity being shoved out of Eternia and down to Asdivine. For Felix, it all happened in one day. But for Asdivine, an entire year had passed since that argument. This is what caused the blaring light to cross the sky a year ago. If Felix were to defeat the shadow deity and bring balance to the world, then she'd need companions to do it. Naturally, Felix requests Celine as the high priestess to join. Celine readily accepts. Then, to the surprise of the heroes, Felix requests for Zack, Stella, and Uriel to come as well. Felix explains that she has gotten attached to them and wants them to come along. The queen suggests going to Arnold Temple since there has been an influx of monsters there recently. Right before they leave, though, the queen stops them. Queen Gloria explains that 1 year ago, Prince Lawrence had disappeared. The prince bears a striking resemblance to Uriel, so the guards mistook her for the prince and thought that Zack and Stella were the ones behind the kidnapping. The queen requests that while they travel, they also keep an eye out for her son. They accept this additional quest without hesitation. With Celine joining the crew, they leave the castle to start the trek to Arnold Temple. In Arnold Temple, Zack senses danger. Before any explanations could be shared, Felix headbutts Zack out of the way of an attack. They find that they are face to face with a legion, a servant of the deities. It appears to be looking for something, but it cannot find it in the temple. Therefore, it leaves. Before Felix could give chase, the shadow deity's monsters attack. Despite the danger that the Arnaltis flower poses, the tension quickly dissipates as the fight was rather simple in the end. Looking around, the group theorized that there may have been some sort of object of worship that used to reside in this temple. Since the Legion was looking for something, the group decided to chase after it. Felix senses that the Legion had traveled south. Celine states that there is a small island to the south, so it is likely where the Legion fled to. Stella suggests that they travel to Sandlow Village because the village chief might be able to help them reach the island. After arriving in the village, the group seeks out the village chief. They learn that there did used to be a statue in Arnold Temple. However, 3 years ago, they had moved it to Katarina Temple. Due to the high tide, the only path to the temple is currently underwater, so they'll have to wait until morning when it is low tide again. Since the alcoholic priestess is the only one who can open Katarina Temple, the village head promises to ask her to unlock the doors. During the night, while the priestess is out drinking, she is possessed by a legion. Due to this, in the morning, no one can find her. Everyone just assumes that the priestess went on ahead to Katarina Temple to unlock the doors, so the group leaves to catch up with her. In the Megrez tunnel, Felix explains that there is a crest that was taken from her, and as long as it is not in her possession, regardless of how many offerings she gets, she will be unable to regain her full strength. After learning that, they make their way through the tunnel. Eventually, the group makes it to Katarina Temple and see the priestess unconscious on the ground. The priestess is very confused since she doesn't remember how she got there. Due to the priestess being an alcoholic though, everyone just waves it off as the alcohol. After unlocking the temple, the priestess leaves. The cat states that the Legion beat them there, so they enter enter the temple and confront the Legion. And when they catch up with it, the Legion takes possession of the monstrous Buffalo Raven. After a tense battle, Zack and Co are able to take out the monster. However, the Legion flees once again. Then, as a result of the battle, the statue absorbed the powers of light and shadow. Due to how the statue absorbed that power, Felix suspects that there may be other religious statues that could do the same, though no one in the group were aware that there were other statues. Therefore, they decide to return to the castle in Gutenberg City to do more research on these statues. As an aside, something else we learn in the battle are the real names of Felix and the Shadow Deity. Felix's real name is Illimier, or Lumiere for short, and the Shadow Deity's real name is Noctodamus, or Noct for short. But since Felix now likes her new name, she comments that the group doesn't need to refer to either deity by their real name. Anyhow, when they arrive at the castle in Gutenberg, Queen Gloria states that she doesn't know about any other statues. However, she will send word to investigate. Specifically, the new High Priestess, who is also Celine's younger sister, Olivia, will be the one to gather information. When Celine sees how competent and reliable Olivia has become, Celine has mixed feelings. She's happy with how Olivia has grown, however, she is worried that there won't be any place for her after helping the Light Deity. In the morning, the group are told that there is a statue of the Shadow Deity in a temple in Northern State. Queen Gloria had already sent word that Zack and the others will be heading that way, and gives them a letter of introduction. Thus, the group make the long trek to the border. The group is able to cross the border into Northern State, and they are quickly able to make it to the large capital, Alvin City. The group make their way to the mansion where the governor lives. Thanks to the letter of introduction from Queen Gloria, they are able to meet up with Hyde Gutenberg. He is the descendant of Alvin Gutenberg, a man who tried to take over the world. Apparently, Alvin's older brother was the one who won the hearts of the people and founded Gutenberg Kingdom. After that, Alvin set up his own political system, creating Alvin City. After Celine explains the situation to Hyde, he says that Alvin City will offer their support. However, they will not be able to until after their ceremony the next day. In order to appease the gods and stop the monster attacks, they have decided to offer a human sacrifice. Zack and the others are appalled. Felix states clearly that she is the Light Deity and she absolutely does not want a human to be sacrificed in her name. However, Hyde doesn't believe Felix because she is a cat. He then states that if they insist on stopping the ceremony, they will need to take it up with Eva the priestess because it was her idea. Zack notices that Uriel is looking sick, so he cuts Celine's arguments off so they can go take care of Uriel. When they return to the inn, worried, Felix questions why Uriel suddenly felt so sick. Uriel explains that she felt sick because of the thought of a human sacrifice. In her home village, such a thing was commonplace, and because everyone was used to the brutality, no one batted an eye at it. Uriel's best friend was sacrificed to stop a famine, and coincidentally, after her dear friend was sacrificed, the crops grew and the famine was over. However, soon after, the village was destroyed by a horde of monsters, with Uriel being the only survivor. Afterwards, the group go to get a good night's sleep since they need to wake up early. The next day, when they arrive at Eva's house, to their surprise, the priestess begs the heroes to stop the human sacrifice. Eva explains that it was Hyde who decided to go with a human sacrifice, and he's just framing the priestess. She further states that because the governor realized that Zack's group are planning to stop the ceremony, he has decided to move it up from that evening to that morning. Hyde had already taken the human sacrifice to Lauren Forest for the ceremony, so with urgency, Zack and the others rush over. When they reach the deepest part of Lauren Forest, the group find a woman lying on the ground. Zack and the others approach the mysterious woman to make sure she's okay, but then she attacks. While they do not want to hurt her, Felix notes that it may be the only way to wake her up. For someone that the group didn't want to hurt, she certainly wanted to hurt Zack and the others. The mysterious woman and her watchdogs hit hard and nearly took everyone out, but after a long, difficult battle, the heroes are able to defeat her. Like Felix said, the mysterious woman wakes up from her hypnosis. She reveals herself to be Eva. This confuses everyone because they left Eva in Alvin City. The priestess explains that a few days ago, she was approached by one of the Shadow Deity's legions. It demanded that she open Seyfert Temple, the temple in Northern State dedicated to the Shadow Deity. However, Eva refuses to do so because she senses there is an imbalance of power in favor of the shadows. She wants to know what the Light Deity thinks of all this, but the answer she receives is being attacked by the Legion. The Legion took Eva's form and convinced Hyde to use a human sacrifice to appease the deities. It doesn't take a genius to realize that Zack and the others were speaking with the disguised Legion who wanted to get the heroes out of the way. Eva explains that Hyde is the one who has the key to the temple now. Since Since no one in Alvin City would be able to tell the difference between the Legion and Eva, the Legion could go into the governor's mansion and get the key and enter the Shadow Deity's temple. Zack and the others rush back to Alvin City to stop this from happening. When they return to the city, Felix immediately senses the Shadow Deity's power emanating from the mansion. When they get there, they see the fake Eva attacking Hyde, trying to get the key, of course scaring and confusing the governor. He becomes even more confused when the real Eva shows herself. The heroes comment that the Eva that's trying to take the key is a fake sent by the Shadow Deity. Upon being caught, the Legion unleashes a dark magic covering the area. The group is able to dodge it because of Felix's warning. However, the others in the mansion are not so lucky. The governor's son, Oliver, is taken over by the Legion and the Chaos. The Legion is planning to use Oliver's physical body to use the key and open Seyfert Temple. The heroes rush to Seyfert Temple to stop the Legion, and when they reach the temple, they find that the Legion has already entered it. The group make Oliver return home on his own, and after Oliver leaves, the heroes explore the temple to find the Legion. When they do find the Legion at the back of the temple, the Shadow Deity's minion summons a monster to fight the heroes. The battle was tougher than expected for the heroes. Nevertheless, with a final lightning from Felix, the Malpade's Raven goes down. However, when the Legion escapes, Felix suspects that it tricked her into attacking it with her powers, but doesn't know why it would do that. Due to her bad feeling about the battle, Felix rushes outside. When they get outside the temple, there is a sudden trembler. It appears to have been caused by the release of the power from the Light Deity's Katarina Temple in the Shadow Deity's Seyfert Temple. This sudden magical power output opened a portal to the hidden dimension, Phantasma. Felix explains that a portal to another dimension could affect Asdivine in a very negative way, so they need to close it immediately. However, it opened in the middle of the ocean with no way of getting to it. Celine and Uriel explained that Gutenberg Castle had been working on an airship and they could use that to reach the portal. With that, the heroes returned to the Gutenberg Kingdom. When they managed to reach the castle, Queen Gloria agrees to let Zack's group borrow their prototype airship. Olivia says that she'll make the preparations so they can take the airship in the morning. Celine compliments Olivia on how on top of everything she is. However, Celine still holds her self-doubt about whether she will have a place in the castle when everything is said and done because of how great her sister is doing. Meanwhile, back in Phantasma, the Shadow Deity ominously comments that he'll use the great magic that's been unleashed to show the Light Deity the ideal world he's going to make. In the morning, Celine announces to the others that the airship is now ready for use, so they fly off to Phantasma. In Phantasma, Felix tries to bid farewell to the heroes. However, Zack and the others won't let her go off on her own. Felix stresses the danger and comments that humans cannot survive here, but the heroes are adamant to not let their companion go off and face the Shadow Deity alone. While Felix doesn't show it, it is obvious that she's touched. With that, everyone ventures into Phantasma. The maze says this area is long, but at the end of it, everyone comes face to face with Noctodamus. Noct explains that he is stealing the energy from Phantasma in order to show Felix something. However, he wants to be alone with her, and therefore wants to kill Zack and the others. Felix protects everyone from Noct's attack. The Light Deity comments that Zack and the others are her companions. They're important to her. The battle is long, and Noct proves to be strong. However, surprisingly, not as difficult as one would expect from a being known as the Shadow Deity. Needless to say, Zack and the others defeat the god. However, Felix thinks to herself that the Shadow Deity was holding back in that battle, and doesn't understand why. Noctodamus calls to the Light Deity and urges her to follow him into a world that he created. That cannot be pondered on though, as Zack and the others cannot breathe. Rather than use her powers to follow the Shadow Deity, Felix expands her power to specifically save the heroes. The Shadow Deity is surprised when he appears in his world alone, but Noct decides to move forward with his plan, with or without Felix. The power of both deities is felt in the world, such as by a young sage named Luna. Meanwhile, Zack finds himself in a white void. He is met with a woman who keeps calling his name and apologizing. However, his time with her is cut short as Felix wakes Zack up. Zack looks around confused. Felix replies that they are in Reveria and the others are nearby. The cat states that she will explain everything when everyone is back together again. So Zack goes to wake up Stella, Uriel, and Celine, and they all meet up in the lodge. There, Felix explains that they are in a parallel world to Asdivine called Reveria. Using a tree as a metaphor, Asdivine is like the trunk of the tree, the central world that all other worlds are based on. Those other worlds are like the branches on the tree. Those other worlds are created when something happens in Asdivine. If Zack were to get hurt in Asdivine, then a world would be created where he wasn't. However, worlds born from such small changes will die and cease to exist very quickly. But worlds that that are born from a very significant change continue to live on. Reveria is one of the worlds that survived. Felix concludes that the shadow deity is somewhere on Reveria, but is unsure as to where. She also believes that this is where Noct wanted to bring her, but doesn't know why. Unfortunately, with the power she currently has, Felix will not be able to bring Zack and the others home to Asdivine. All Felix can do is apologize. Zack intervenes in this conversation and says that everyone is tired and they should just sleep on it for now and figure things out in the morning. Though Zack himself is unable to sleep due to everything that has been going on, so he goes out for some fresh air. Felix follows after him. When Felix tries to apologize again, Zack reiterates that he believes that they'll find a way home, and besides, in the meantime, the shadow deity is still out there and they need to stop him. Zack is sure the girls feel the same way and just need some sleep to calm themselves down. Sure enough, in the morning, the girls apologize to Felix for giving her such a hard time about being trapped in Reveria. Apparently, Uriel had found a map of Reveria in the lodge, and there is a village to the west called Karanaka, so it's decided that Karanaka village will be their next destination. After making their way to the village, the group decide to talk to the villagers to get some information about Reveria. They learn that there is only one deity in Reveria. It is known as the Great Deity. The heroes suspect, though, that the Great Deity is really the Shadow Deity, and despite being a medieval fantasy world, the concept of kingdoms and royalty is an unknown in Reveria. There is also a selfish hero who works directly for the Great Deity, and there is a holy statue in the Wold Shrine, and this hero has banned anyone to enter it until he arrives. The group decide that they should go ahead and inspect Wold Shrine. After traveling through this shrine, Zack and the others find and inspect the statue of the Great Deity. Now being close to the Great Deity statue, Felix feels that it is somehow related to Noctodamus, so she destroys it. When it gets destroyed, Zack and Stella feel like there is some sort of change with the magical presence. Felix explains that destroying the statue weakened the power of shadows in the immediate area. Afterwards, they go outside to see what was changed. Following Felix, the group make their way to the ocean. Felix points out a tower in the distance and states that is where the shadow deity is. However, the tower is protected by a magical barrier, but destroying that statue in the Wold Shrine weakened the barrier. So now the goal is to find a ship that they can use to get to that tower and find and destroy any other statues of the Great Deity to get rid of the barrier. Solving the issue of the ship, Uriel points out that the map is showing a port town called Izar Port not too far from their location. For now, they'll go to Izar. As Zack's group leaves, the selfish hero arrives at Wold Shrine. His name is Julius, and he is accompanied by a woman named Vanessa. Both are being spied on by a robed youth. The two realize that the statue of the Great Deity has been destroyed, and Vanessa senses a great deal of light magic in the area where the statue is supposed to be, so they leave to report it to the Great Deity. The Asdivine heroes eventually make it to Izar Port. Here, Selene is mistaken for a witch. Apparently, up in Mount Hoba, there lives a witch and her disciple. This misunderstanding is cleared up rather quickly, though. Stella explains that they came to Izar for a sturdy ship, so the guy suggests they talk to the shipbuilders mast and rudder. Meanwhile, the robed youth who is spying on Julius and Vanessa has returned to his master, Luna. After reporting in, Luna requests that the youth bring Zack and the others to her. The robed youth thus leaves to collect the heroes. At the same time, Julius and Vanessa are reporting to the Shadow Deity. The Shadow Deity is in truth the Great Deity as the Asdivine hero suspected. The Shadow Deity orders Julius and Vanessa to kill Zack, Stella, Uriel, and Selene, but to leave Felix alone. Meanwhile, the shipbuilders are happy to take the Asdivine hero's job, until the question of payment comes up. Stella knows that they actually hadn't thought that far ahead yet, and this really ticks off Mast and Rudder. Zack tries to defuse the situation, and after some thinking, Mast and Rudder decide if the heroes can defeat the fanged behemoth in Gemini Tower and get its horn, then the shipbuilders will make them a ship for free. Of course, Zack and the others readily accept. Gemini Tower is a very long, large maze. After the heroes get deeper in, Felix senses that there is a trap ahead. However, Zack and the others press forward anyways, but it was a trap. Felix is able to push Zack and Stella out of the dark sigil, but Uriel and Selene get caught up in it. The trap teleports them away. It is then that Julius appears. Everyone knows that Julius looks just like Zack. Julius also for a second mistakes Stella for Vanessa, but quickly retracts that. Julius then attacks. Despite missing a couple of party members, the original trio is able to defeat Julius. The Zack lookalike has no choice but to leave. With that, Zack, Stella, and Felix leave to find the others. Meanwhile, Uriel and Selene have been brought to Vanessa. Selene initially mistakes Vanessa for Stella, but Uriel corrects her, stating that Vanessa is far more vulgar than Stella. Insulted, Vanessa attacks. The two girls are able to hold their own and defeat her. After Vanessa is defeated, Zack and the others appear. Seeing herself outnumbered, the Stella lookalike has no choice but to flee. Now all together again, Felix explains what is going on. Julius and Vanessa are the Reveria versions of Zack and Stella. Whenever someone is born on Asdivine, a counterpart is born into the various parallel worlds. The counterpart might not always fully resemble the original though. For example, someone's counterpart may not even be the same gender as the original, or how Julius and Vanessa are nowhere near as heroic as Zack and Stella. After traveling through Gemini Tower some more, the group make it to the top where the Fanged Behemoth is. To get the horn, the group battle the beast. The Fanged Behemoth was very strong. It took a lot of strength, but eventually Zack and the others were able to defeat it. The Fanged Behemoth give the heroes its horn after determining they are worthy. Zack and the others then destroy the great deity statue inside the tower. Uriel senses that there is some sort of change, and meanwhile Selene laments to herself about how, despite being the High Priestess, she is unable to sense this change. Anyhow, with horn in hand, Zack and the others make their way back to Iser Port. In the port, when they are getting closer to the shipbuilder's place, Julius and Vanessa appear. Interacting with them, the group come to accept that Julius and Vanessa are Reveria's Zack and Stella. Using their status as the heroes, Julius and Vanessa are able to convince everyone that the real heroes are the villains. The civilians try to capture the heroes, but thankfully, the robed youth from earlier produces a smokescreen and gets the heroes out of there. Outside of Iser Port, the youth urges that the heroes follow him. Knowing that they can't return to Iser anyway, the group agree to follow the robed youth to Mount Hoba. At the hidden mountainside house, they meet Luna, the Reveria counterpart of Selene. Luna's magic is quite immense, even surpassing Felix's magic while in her current form. The fact that her counterpart is powerful enough to feel the existence of other worlds just fuels Selene's insecurities even more. During these introductions, the robed youth returns. Luna has the youth remove his garb, revealing him to be the missing Prince Lawrence. Luna introduces him and confirms that he is Uriel's original. Felix confirms that their life signatures are the same, stating that Prince Lawrence is from the original world of Asdivine, whereas Uriel is the counterpart from this branch world, Reveria. Prince Lawrence insists on there being no formalities and to just call him Lars. Luna explains that a year ago she found Lars after a light streaked across the sky, so Luna took Lars in and he became her disciple. Felix apologizes that it was likely caused by the fight she had with Noct a human year ago. Uriel, on the other hand, is panicking at learning she is not from the same world as Zack. Her memories tell her that Zack was the one who saved her, but if they're not even from the same world, then how could that be? Anyhow, Luna says that she might have a way to allow the heroes to go back to Iser Port. However, it will take a while to do so. Lars then tells them that the people in Gunberg Town may know about another statue of the great deity. Gunberg Town is on the other side of Mount Hoba, so with those plans in place, the heroes venture deeper into the mountain. After traveling through Mount Hoba, as they travel through the mountain, Uriel decides that she doesn't want to let what happened the previous night just hang. Even though Zack has no memories of saving Uriel 2 years ago, he believes her when she says he did. Everyone else does as well. They know Uriel by now, and they know that she wouldn't lie. So if she says Zack saved her, then it was Zack who saved her. Meanwhile, Julius and Vanessa are deeper in the mountain looking for treasure to get rich off of. While they are looking and flirting, a minecart comes racing in, knocking them over and throwing the Asdivine heroes out. The two groups notice each other. Wanting confirmation, Uriel asks Julius if he recognizes her. Julius should have no way of knowing her story unless he was actually there, which he was. Julius not only recognizes Uriel as the sole survivor from that village, but even points out how it happened 2 years ago. Julius then concludes that Uriel chased him all the way here to thank him, so he openly flirts with her in front of his girlfriend. Zack cuts in, pointing out how Uriel doesn't want to go with them, so a fight breaks out. The battle against the Reveria counterparts is long and difficult. Ultimately, Stella gets the last hit on Vanessa, while Zack gets the last hit on Julius. The battle was intense enough that Julius and Vanessa get knocked into a pit in the mountain. Uriel is still a little shaken that it was the rude Julius who saved her, and not the heroic Zack, but they have to press forward. They eventually make it to the hot spring town of Gutenberg. At the end, Uriel goes deeper into what happened in her village. She explains that she lied about her friend being the one who was sacrificed. The reality was that Uriel was going to be sacrificed. However, on the day that she was to be sacrificed, the monsters attacked. Uriel was lucky to be in her family's basement at the time, and thus avoided the attack. It was then Julius who slayed the monsters, and dug her out of the rubble of her former home. Julius never gave his name, but introduced himself as the hero before leaving. Wanting to repay her savior, Uriel traveled and honed her magic so that she would be useful. Uriel's village was incredibly isolated, and so she never knew what the outside world was like. Then, when she was sleeping, she somehow got switched with Prince Lawrence. She woke woke up in the morning in Asdivine, and due to how isolated her village was, Uriel had no idea she was in an unfamiliar environment. It was then the next year when she met Zach, Stella, and Felix. Celine questions what Uriel plans to do now that she knows it was Julius who rescued her, and Uriel isn't sure. Zach suggests that she sleep on it. The next morning, Stella is in a bit of a panic because Uriel had gone missing. As they're trying to figure out what happened, a concerned old man comes in. He says he saw Uriel leaving with some shady guy who looked like Zach, but felt it didn't look right and wanted to let her friend know. Apparently, he just saw Uriel and Stella hanging out the previous day. They conclude that the old man was referring to Julius. Without any hesitation, the group go to Trallus Shrine, where the old man saw Julius taking Uriel. Meanwhile, in the shrine, Julius has Uriel tied up in the deepest part of the shrine. He is being very, very gross. Uriel is understandably disgusted and asks about Vanessa in response to his advances. Julius states that there isn't a problem because he didn't see Vanessa after the fall, so concludes she didn't make it. Cutting away from that, Zach and the others have arrived at the shrine. They see that Julius and Uriel aren't there, so with haste they trek further into the shrine to find their friend. It didn't take long to reach where Julius was, and thank goodness Zach's group arrived just before Julius tried anything physical. Zach quickly knocks Julius back while the others run up to Uriel. Uriel is shocked that they all showed up to help her, not to mention how worried they all looked. Zach responds that they didn't need a reason to save her because they're friends and that's all that matters. The attention then turns back to Julius as the battle against him begins. But alone, Julius is just pathetic, so taking that pervert out was easy work for our heroes overall. After the battle, Julius reveals that he didn't just save Uriel by chance. In fact, he wasn't even looking for her when he arrived in the village. Truthfully, Julius had sicked the monsters onto Uriel's village. He was the one responsible for its destruction. He wasn't really looking through the destroyed homes for survivors. He was looking for valuables he could sell. Uriel is understandably shocked and upset. She regains her composure and states that if Julius never destroyed her home, then she would have never met Zach. No, not just Zach, but Stella, Felix, and Celine as well. They're all important to her, and she won't let Julius hurt them. Julius tries to sound tough, but runs away in fear all the same. Now that Uriel's past has been placed in the past, it's time to destroy the great deity statue that's in the shrine. There is a magical surge when Felix destroys the statue, signaling that there's been another change in Riveria. The group decide that their next move should be to report to Luna. However, they will not be able to go back through Mount Hoba the way they came because it was blocked off. They decide that they'll just need to go back to town and ask the mayor to open it for them. When they get back to Gutenberg town, the heroes try to meet with the mayor. However, the soldiers in front refuse them. After some arguing, a woman named Elise interjects. Elise is Oliver's Riveria counterpart and is also the mayor's daughter and the captain of the guard. She agrees to let them meet with her father. Mayor Arvel refuses to open the door. However, Elise manages to convince him. The deal made is that if Zach's group can get rid of the gobblers who are eating the mayor's precious jewels, then he will create a copy of the key that'll let them open the door through Mount Hoba. The task that was put before them wasn't too difficult though, and the heroes are able to take out the gobblers easily. Afterwards, Arvel says that he'll create the key as promised, but because it's a magic key, it'll take him all night to make. Elise states that they've booked the heroes a room at the inn, and also they'll be able to relax in Gutenberg town's famous hot springs. When they get to the hot springs, Zach is told that he'll need to work for now before his turn to enter the springs. So Zach goes off to work while the others go off to enjoy the springs. In the hot springs, the girls learn that Felix is a girl, and this is also where the story of a platonic friendship changes into a harem story, as Felix and Celine express their love for Zach, while Uriel and Stella double down on their obvious feelings from earlier in the story. Eventually, the girls all leave Stella alone in the hot spring. She wonders if she'd be able to find the courage to tell Zach. Unbeknownst to her, Zach is just outside working, so she is understandably shocked when he calls out to her. Zach confirms that he didn't hear the girls' conversation, but he did hear Stella say his name. Stella tells Zach that she does have something to tell him, but doesn't have the courage to, so Zach replies that he's fine to wait for as long as Stella needs. Anyhow, with that flirting out of the way, night has come to Riveria. Upon learning that Felix is female, the girls decide that she is no longer allowed to sleep with Zach. They've also decided to keep Zach in the dark about this. Meanwhile, back at Sephiroth Tower, the Shao deity expresses his disappointment with Julius. He's going to give the man one final chance to kill Zach and the others. If he cannot succeed, then he will face the consequences. When morning comes, the group make their way back to Mount Hoba. As they explore the mountain once more, they have a run-in with Julius. This is the false hero's last chance to kill the real heroes. Just as the battle is about to start though, Vanessa shows up. She reveals that she's been looking for Julius Julius this whole time. Now with Vanessa by his side, the battle truly begins. While Julius is doing most of the damage, Vanessa is the real threat due to strengthening and healing her boyfriend. But once she's out of the picture, Julius is laughably easy for Zack and the others to defeat. And when the battle is over, Vanessa states that they need to report back to the great deity. However, Julius decides that instead the two should just leave Noct and live for themselves. So they leave while flirting with each other. By evening, the heroes return to Luna's place. Luna has created a talisman that lessens the hatred of nearby humans, so Zack and the others will be able to return to Port. Lars then reveals that he did some digging for the heroes. Turns out that there is a shrine that houses a great deity statue by Madler Village, which they can get to by boat. Now getting that ship in Port and going to Madler Village is their top priority. In the middle of the night, Zack approaches Luna to see if, due to being Celine's counterpart, if she could help him understand his companion. Luna suggests that Zack just hide and wait, because if he does, he'll learn more about Celine. He does as he is, forced to, and shortly after he hides, Celine enters to speak with Luna. Celine reveals her insecurities to her counterpart. She doesn't see her own self-worth and is jealous of those around her. She asks Luna if she'll be able to become as magically powerful as her counterpart. And to Celine's disappointment, Luna states that no matter how hard Celine trains, her magical abilities will not get that much stronger. However, there are things that Celine has that make others jealous of her. Luna then calls Zack in, believing that he'd be able to explain. Luna then leaves the two alone. Zack does his best to comfort Celine. The latter reveals her history to him. Celine explains that since she was a child, she was able to hear the voices of the deities. So she was raised to become the High Priestess and never even considered the idea to chase a different career because she was happy. However, when Olivia entered the castle due to hearing the deities' voices only once, Celine became very insecure. She was frustrated that her magic wasn't getting stronger, which is why she took up martial arts. She was frustrated with herself and hated that she was jealous of the one who looked up to her. All of her own doubts and self-hatred had been building up over all this time. Zack states that, like Luna, he finds himself jealous of Celine. Specifically, he's jealous of her strength. Being jealous is a natural part of human life, but it doesn't define the individual. There are things that only Zack can do, and there are things that only Celine can do. There is no reason to be jealous of that. Celine is Celine, and that's the only thing that matters. Now feeling better about herself, Celine and Zack separate to go back to bed. In the morning, the group bid their farewells to Luna and Lars before they set off for Port. When they reach Port, they see that the talisman did work on the people. They make their way to finally meet up with Mast and Rudder. The shipbuilders cry in joy when they see the heroes. Zack and the others were away for so long and made the men incredibly worried, so they were extremely relieved to see that the heroes are fine. After handing over the monster horn, the shipbuilders reveal that they had already built the ship that was requested during that time. Now with the ship in their possession, the heroes take to the seas to get to Madler Village. Meanwhile, Julius and Vanessa are on the run from the shadow deity. The godly figure commands his legions to kill them. However, the legions are hesitant to do so, pointing out that Noct has become a little unhinged. Rather than kill the false heroes, the legions leave to track down the actual heroes, leaving the shadow deity alone with Julius and Vanessa. Back with Zack's group, they have arrived in Madler Village, and they go to find the village chief. When they find the old man, they ask where the shrine is, but the chief refuses to answer. Turns out that a servant of the great deity has demanded the village chief's granddaughter, Claire, as a human sacrifice. Should she refuse, then something terrible would happen to the village. Zack and the others volunteer to stop this from happening. Claire agrees to show the heroes to Bendigo Shrine. At the shrine, Claire opens the gate so that Zack and the others can go through. After getting reassurance that they'll save the village without the need to sacrifice Claire, she leaves for home. After making their way through Bendigo Shrine, Zack and the others meet with the great deity's servant. However, it turns out to just be a normal everyday monster. It has the capacity for magic, which is what allowed it to talk. The beast was just using its ability to talk to trick the villagers. As it is a regular monster, the Strato Avis is very easy to defeat. Afterwards, Felix uses her magic to strip the monster of its magic so it can no longer speak to humans. With that dealt with, the heroes go deeper into the shrine to find the next great deity statue. When they reach the deepest part, they come across Julius and Vanessa once again. However, there is something different about them. The two of them had been corrupted and controlled by the power of shadows, changing them into evil Julius and evil Vanessa. Evil Julius and evil Vanessa are stronger than ever before. However, with strategy and patience, Zack and the others are able to defeat them once more. After the battle, evil Julius and evil Vanessa attempt to use the shadows to corrupt and control Zack. However, a light comes from the protagonist that not only pushes them back, but also breaks the brainwashing. Everyone is naturally confused over what happened. Regardless, the brainwashing on Julius and Vanessa has been broken, and the two fall fall through a hole in the shrine. Again. Anyhow, Felix is refusing to explain what just happened to Zack. The light deity breaks the statue in the shrine, and the magical pulse that resulted from it felt different than before. Turns out that the statue in Bendigo Shrine was the last statue. Destroying it has caused the barrier around Nox's tower to disappear. The heroes head off to finally confront the shadow deity once more. However, when they get there, there's a storm that is blocking their way. Felix says it should die down by morning, so the group head off to Luna's so they can stay the night, and Luna happily allows everyone to stay. In the middle of the night, Felix goes to the boys' room to speak to Lars. Felix wants to know if Lars wants to go back to Asdivine or if he'd rather stay in Riveria. The boy is conflicted. Zack states that whatever Lars decides, he'll respect his decision and just give Queen Gloria a message instead of the prince. In the morning, Lars gives Zack his royal crest as the boys decide to stay in Riveria with Luna because he's found something precious to him and is happy. With that, the heroes leave for Sephiroth's tower. When they make it inside the tower, Zack isn't feeling too well. Felix passes some light magic through Zack, allowing the latter to feel better. Felix finally explains that Zack is a light progeny. A light progeny is a human who is born with the same powers as the light deity. Likewise, there is a shadow progeny somewhere as well. When the light or shadow progeny die, a new one is born to take their place, and Zack just happens to be the current one. Once they get deeper into Sephiroth Tower, they come across a couple of legions. The legions reiterate that the shadow deity doesn't want to kill Felix, just the humans with her. The legions transform into monsters and attack the heroes. Despite their might, Zack and the others are able to defeat the legions. Afterwards, the legions flee, and with that, Zack and the others continue their exploration of the tower. It is at the deepest part where the heroes finally confront Noct. Tauntingly, Noct asks Felix what she thinks of the world where no one knows about her, and Felix just comments that it's interesting to know how much Noct hates her, surprising the shadow deity. Angered that Felix still doesn't understand and frustrated by how Felix cares so deeply for these humans, the shadow deity attacks. Despite how he supposedly has gotten stronger, Noct must have still been holding back because Zack and the others are able to easily defeat him to the point that it was trivial. Nevertheless, after the battle, the shadow deity still has some fight left in him. Zack figures out that what Noct wanted Felix to realize is how scared he is. After all, deities get their strength from the people's faith, and if humans cease to believe in the deities, then the deities themselves cease to exist. In the central world of Asdivine, the people's belief in the deities is dwindling, especially in the case of the shadow deity. Noct may be close to disappearing forever. That fear in reality is what he wanted Felix to recognize. The shadow deity is annoyed though that it was a human who figured it out, not Felix. He's so frustrated that he has decided that because Felix realized it too late that he's going to destroy Asdivine so that a new central world where the civilians would be fully devoted to the deities could take its place. But of course, that results in everyone on Asdivine being killed in the process. With that, the shadow deity takes his leave. Thankfully, due to the presence of the light progeny, Felix has enough energy to create a portal to Asdivine so they can chase after Noct. The portal spits them out in Arnault Temple, confirming that they are finally back home. After arriving in Asdivine, Felix notes that creating the portal was only possible because Zack was there, but would have been trivial to create if the shadow progeny was also there. She goes on to explain that the light and shadow progenies attract each other, even though neither may ever know of their powers, let alone the others. Because of that, it is likely that they've already met the shadow progeny, but that person just hasn't awakened to their potential yet, and because of that, Felix is unable to sense who that person could be. Putting that aside, Felix points out that Noct got to Asdivine first, so it is likely he will take control of a powerful person in order to use that power to destroy Asdivine. Just as they suspected, the shadow deity takes over Queen Gloria. Noct feels Felix's presence and realizes that the others had made it to Asdivine, so he uses the queen's power to create a hit on Zack and the others. The heroes quickly learn of this when they happen to see some guards looking for them. They decide to take a detour to get to Gutenberg to find out what is going on. However, when they reach the castle, the heroes are jumped by the knights. Celine's sister orders the heroes' arrest, so Celine requests that the others trust her because she trusts Olivia. With that, everyone is taken to the dungeon. Olivia approaches the locked away prisoners with a couple of guards. Olivia appears to be tossing magic at Celine to abuse her. However, in reality, she is using that to hide a key and a note she tosses to her. Afterwards, Olivia leaves to give the heroes a chance to escape. escape. Once everyone is out, Selene activates a hidden switch that creates a magic portal they can use to get out of the castle. The heroes are then teleported to Ligal Woods. In order to evade the knights, they decide to go to Chaldea Orphanage. When they get there, Shannon gives them all shelter, and the heroes fill her in on what's happened since they left. Shannon lets the heroes stay the night so that Selene can have time to decode the note. She also says that she has a friend who can get the airship for the heroes. When morning comes, Selene reveals that the note is instructing them to go to Seyfert Temple. Felix follows up that Shannon's mysterious and shady friend did bring the airship to them. Also, this person gave Felix a heart jewel, but it can't be used in combat. Regardless, Felix gives it to Zack for safekeeping. So, off to Seyfert Temple they go. When they enter the temple, Felix senses that there is a legion inside, and while she is not surprised that Zack could sense it, she is surprised that Stella could also feel it. Anyhow, using the key to access a hidden part of the temple, Zack and the others make their way to the legion. When they reach it, Felix tells it she intends to ensure Noct will be able to continue existing on Asdivine. However, the legion explains that disappearing is not what Noct fears. What he fears is living in a world without Felix. Due to how the legion physically cannot disobey the shadow deity, despite how it and the other legions disagree with Noct, the legion uses its magic to destroy itself. In doing so, the legion created a statue of the shadow deity. However, the heroes cannot destroy it because doing so could unleash a powerful blast of shadow magic that would affect the surrounding area. And another consequence of the legion destroying itself is that the heart jewel takes on a new form, but no one knows why. Regardless, since Zack and the others are unable to do anything else, they leave the temple. But when they exit the temple, they are jumped by royal knights. Luckily, Oliver, of all people, shows up with a bunch of fighters to save the heroes, and they all flee to Alvin City. In Alvin City, Oliver explains that his father retired and that he is now in charge of Alvin City. Oliver tells the heroes that Catarina Temple has had a suspicious amount of soldiers coming and going from it, so it is possible that that is where the Legion are setting up the next statue. Oliver also states that he might be able to get them back into Gutenberg Castle without anyone noticing, but it takes some preparation. He promises to get the preparations for that cell during the time that Zack and the others inspect Catarina Temple. The heroes travel through a hidden part of Catarina Temple, but by the time that Zack and the others reach the back area, the statue had already been completed. When the Legion is no more, the heart jewel charges up once again. With nothing more they can do, the heroes have to return to Alvin City. When they return, they find out that Oliver had written out a letter of introduction and gotten disguises ready for them. With all this in hand, Zack and the others head off to Gutenberg City. The first thing they do in the city is change into their disguises, and just as Oliver stated, no one in the city can tell that it's Zack's group who are wandering around the city. However, when they are inside the castle, there are knights there waiting for them, and they are suspicious of how there is a dog with these messengers. They end up ripping off Felix's disguise and alerting everyone in the castle that Zack and the others are here, making the entire castle hostile. Unfortunately, the way to the throne room has been blocked off from the heroes. Selene concludes that Olivia would be able to get them in though, so the others decide to trust Selene and search for Olivia. Deep in the castle, they find Olivia with some guards and monsters. The new high priestess orders the attack, forcing the heroes into a fight, but as they are just regular enemies, it is hardly a challenge. Selene is then able to snap her sister out of the trance that the shadow deity had put her in. Now herself, Olivia agrees to open the way to the throne room. However, it turns out that the door was booby-trapped and pushes Olivia to the point of nearly passing out. Zack and the others need to proceed without her. When they confront Noct, he states that he will kill Felix in revenge for killing his legions. Felix tries to explain that the legions sacrificed themselves in order to create those statues, but Noct won't let her speak. In anger, Noct unleashes a powerful shadow aura that even those without magic can feel. The fight against the controlled Queen Gloria begins. Perhaps Noct did not have full control over the Queen, or perhaps he still had subconscious doubts about killing Felix, as the shadow deity isn't able to lay a single hit onto Zack and the others. It gives Zack the chance to present Lars's pendant. The light of it is enough to give Queen Gloria the strength she needs to force the shadow deity out of her. Now separated, Noct once again declares how he will destroy Asdivine and then leaves, causing the shadow magic in Gutenberg to disappear. Leaving the Queen to Olivia, Zack and the others rush out to chase after Noct. When they get outside of the city, they see some intense light shooting in the sky. Felix explains that Noct had opened a gateway to Eternia. With haste, Zack's group rushes to Eternia. In Eternia, Felix states that the presentation of the land of the gods is a reflection of their mindset. The initial area is a sentiment of past memories. They need to explore the Eternia that reflects Noct's mental state in order to find him. In the flower area, they face two powerful monsters. While the Rubik's Ogre proved to be a fair opponent, the Rubik's Seal was anything but, and nearly took them all out. However, Zack and the others persevered and beat both opponents. With the magic that was left behind, Felix is able to create ultimate weapons for Selene and Uriel. Afterwards, they reach the next area of Eternia. Here, Zack and the others once again come across powerful gatekeepers. They were the difficult Rubik's Dragon, the annoying Rubik's Fairy, and the fair Rubik's Behemoth. Just as before, Felix was able to create ultimate weapons from the magic that was left behind for herself, Stella, and Zack. Finally, the heroes come face to face with Noct. However, once again, the Shadow Deity refuses to listen to them. A fight breaks out, and this time Noct really isn't holding anything back, but as hard-hitting as he is, Zack and the others are able to knock him back. However, not knock him out. Rather, the Shadow Deity is more angered than staggered. It is then that the Heart Jewel comes in clutch because, as it turns out, the Legions had stored their magic in the Heart Jewel and unleash it to help the heroes. With a second wind, the battle restarts. The Shadow Deity's anger has allowed him to take on a new form known as the Curse of Darkness. The Curse of Darkness is incredibly powerful and more than tough enough to destroy everyone. Even still, Zack and the others fought back. Despite the challenge in front of them, the heroes are able to defeat the Curse of Darkness. Now that he's been defeated, the Shadow Deity will finally listen to Felix. The Light Deity apologizes to her friend and wants to continue serving the multiverse together. Likewise, Noct apologizes for taking things too far. The humans assure Noct to not worry about disappearing because they'll do everything they can to ensure the people of Asdivine remember both the Light and Shadow Deities. Noct decides to trust these humans. However, he also states that it's too late. Due to his own actions, Noct has overspent himself and disappears anyway. Felix now has her crest back, so she is able to leave the cat and return to her true form, the woman that Zack saw in his dreams. Felix decides that she's going to keep the name Felix and give the cat her old name of Lumiere. She also decides that because light and shadow must be in balance, she'll take on the power of the shadows as well as the light. However, Zack points out that it would be too much strain on her and put her existence in danger, just like with the Shadow Deity. Therefore, as the Light Progeny, he'll stay in Eternia and become the new Light Deity. With that, Zack uses his power as the new Light Deity to send Stella, Uriel, and Celine back to Asdivine. The days pass as life continues without Zack. Stella returns to Chaldea Orphanage, Uriel travels the world, and Celine regains her position as High Priestess, all of them doing their part in expanding the faith in the Light and Shadow deities. Meanwhile, in Eternia, Zack and Felix are getting used to their new roles as these deities and doing their best to fix things from where they are. A few years later, Stella is working on a mission with Lumiere as a monster tamer. Just as she finished her last mission, Zack appears to her. He has now gotten used to his godly powers enough that he can manifest himself onto Asdivine every now and then. The childhood friends confess their feelings to each other, and the story ends. Believe it or not, I went into this game because it looked like it had a stereotypical medieval fantasy story. Sometimes you just want some good old-fashioned predictable cliches where the characters carry most of the narrative. Yet, I had to cut so many little character moments from the summary in order to keep this video down to a reasonable time, and I bet it's still running long. Look at all these crossed out scripted lines! There is a possibility that the story summary could have been longer if I had played New Game Plus. According to my post-game research, it appears that the story slightly changes in a second playthrough. If the articles I read are correct, then it looks like there is some sort of point in the New Game Plus version of the story where the Shadow Deity survives too. The ending screen implies this as well. I got the Stella normal ending, but apparently each girl gets a normal ending and a true ending. I don't know how a game can have 4 true endings, but this one does. I know there is a sequel, so I can't help but wonder which of the true endings is the actual true ending. I imagine that it is either the Stella true ending, because Stella is the default ending and is on the cover art of the sequel, or the Uriel true ending, because from what I read, it is the only ending where there are no changes in anyone's dynamic with each other. Uriel was already obsessed with Zack after all, and it looks like it's left ambiguous as to whether Zack reciprocates in that ending. Meanwhile, Stella's true ending has Zack and Stella get married, but I honestly don't know. There isn't a lot of information on this little series that I could find. Why do you think I didn't have a history section? Anyway, I am overall happy with the stereotypical story. Something I really appreciate is how the world building feels so natural. The characters don't just randomly explain to the audience that if a monster can speak, it means they are significantly stronger than normal in lore, not necessarily in gameplay. The characters say it because they are shocked that a weak, mild lizard was able to speak, something that, according to the rules of to this world shouldn't be possible. When it comes to Gutenberg Kingdom specifically, the characters outside of Ergo just know the geography and town names because they grew up there. So there isn't any point of explaining to the player because the characters themselves have no reason to explain it to each other. It just feels natural, like these people are really living in this world, and that's something I appreciate. The fact that there are other parallel universes is a fun concept too. With how Reveria doesn't have the concept of kingdoms and royalty combined with the history of Alvin City, it can be assumed that a difference in that history is what created Reveria. Maybe in the alternate history of Reveria, Alvin Gutenberg never tried to take over the world, or maybe Alvin won against his brother. Either way, with how the story highlighted Alvin City's history, I'm positive that a change in that is what resulted in Reveria. It makes me wonder, with the number of parallel worlds, what significant historical change created it, and what are the differences between the central world and the parallel one? It opens the imagination and is easy to see how a sequel could work. Just put it in a parallel world. Maybe meet another version of Zack who isn't a perverted jerk like Julius. Speaking of characters, I really like the good guys. Sure, Zack is basically a blank slate for the player to project onto, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a personality. His friendship with the others is sweet, then his insecurities and fear of being the light progeny to the point of trembling and needing Stella's comfort feels very natural to his character. I think the weakest party member in both gameplay and story, funny enough, is Celine, which is rather ironic considering how insecure she secretly is. It's probably because she's the last party member to join, and unlike the others, she's in her 20s, not her teens, so her friendship with the others does feel a little awkward to me. Also, unlike the others, she doesn't have a huge impact on the plot. Her counterpart has a much bigger impact in my opinion, and this is to the point where I seriously considered cutting her whole insecurity character plot from my story summary. The other three had major impact though. Almost the entirety of Reveria felt dedicated to Uriel's backstory. She did come off as creepy at the beginning, but as the story went on, I really grew attached to her. She became a real team player. She went from being a total obsessed creepy stalker towards Zack to a genuine friend who just has a really big crush. Then I absolutely adore the sisterly friendship Uriel and Stella have. Sure, they started out as rivals, but as time went on, they became super close friends. Like that old man saw the two girls just hanging out casually together. Not to mention how worried and freaked out Stella got when Uriel got kidnapped. Speaking of Stella, I did really like this girl next door lovesick tomboy. I know she had a bad habit of whipping others when her emotions ran too high, but she was working so hard to break that habit. It is interesting to see that as the story progresses, she does use her whip less and less. Now, her story is very intertwined with Zack's. Makes sense because the two grew up together and know each other so well before the story even begins. And whenever Zack is pretending not to be down, Stella is the one who notices and stays to comfort him. But her big heart is not only for Zack, which is also very appreciated. Like I said, I love the friendship between Stella and Uriel. In fact, she appears to be pretty observant and protective of others in general. Her goal is to be a professional monster trainer after all. I know she is a bit of a cliche, but I do appreciate good cliches. They're cliches for a reason after all. Lastly, of the main characters, we have Felix. Like Uriel, I did not like Felix at the beginning due to how high and mighty she was. I think it was around Phantasma that I started to get sold on her character. I think because she was so high and mighty, I appreciated how she was often the butt of the joke. Though there were moments when she let her sweeter side show, primarily displayed starting in Reveria, appropriately when we see her true form. Granted, it's possible that one of the reasons Felix grew on me was because I gave her a very stupid voice that made me laugh and also made me want to really voice Felix if there was ever some sort of adaptation. Yowzers! I didn't do this for the deity form though, just the cat. I'd be open to voicing both forms, but I'd be fine with just the cat. My non-game related fun aside, I liked most of the non-playable characters too. Love was a very big theme with all the characters. The parental love of Queen Gloria and Shannon to the implied romantic love of Lars to Luna and Noct to Felix. I really loved how worried Mast and Rudder were for the main characters. I know that they're minor characters, but considering their antagonism, it's really sweet how concerned they were. There was a negative love too, though, and those I did not like. That is the gross, perverted love of Julius, Oliver, and other minor characters. I just hated when these moments happened. I'm glad Zack was protective of his friends every single time, though. Or that time that Celine completely destroyed a couple of perverts, but I did not like that these characters were a thing in the first place. It made me very glad that Zack and Lars were normal. Characters aside, I do really like how this story answers almost every single question it brings up. It's why my whole story summary was so long despite being a stereotypical medieval fantasy story. There are 3 loose strings though. The first is that, while I didn't mention it in my summary, the story does at one point bring up the question of who or what created the deities, but never answers that question. The second is Shannon's mysterious friend. Felix implies this person has a shady aura about them, and this person was able to get their hands on the airship despite the circumstances involving the ship in Gutenberg Castle at the time, and this person was the one who gave the heroes the heart jewel. Is this person supposed to be a character in the sequel, or are they just a random person that's not meant to bring up any questions? The third and most important mystery that is left a mystery is who is the Shadow Progeny. While I say it is an unanswered question, it does feel pretty obvious that Stella is the Shadow Progeny. At the beginning of the game, Zack comments that Stella uses shadow magic. Now, you can argue that it is mentioned purely for tutorial reasons, but I'd argue that it is a hint. The Light and Shadow Progenies are supposed to be close to each other, and not only are Zack and Stella childhood friends who are always together, there is so much flirting between them that I had to cut. You can even argue that the fact that their counterparts are dating is a hint towards how close they are to each other. Stella is able to sense things that Felix is surprised she can feel, since only Zack, as the Light Progeny, should be able to sense these enemies. Most importantly in this argument is that Stella is on the cover art with Zack, but none of the other party members are. With all these hints, I don't understand why it is never confirmed. The only reason I can think of is how the girls reacted when they learned that the Light and Shadow Progenies attract each other. All 3 of them thought it could be themselves. That's because, as I said in the summary, the dynamic in the party is a harem, and this really bothers me. Up until the Hot Springs episode, this felt purely platonic to me. Sure, it was confirmed that both Stella and Uriel had a thing for Zack, but they still felt like friends, with Zack and each other. As obsessed as Uriel is with Zack, during the course of the story, it felt like if Zack chose Stella, she'd be okay with it. Same with Stella towards Uriel. But then when Celine revealed her feelings at the Hot Springs, I just yelled at my screen, saying, "Zack is a minor! Celine, stop!" And I just groaned when Felix revealed her feelings. I'm sorry, I'm just not a huge fan of harem stories in the first place, especially when it sacrifices a platonic friendship between the whole group. I did not go into this thinking it was a harem. I was not expecting a harem when I bought this game, and then it just transformed into one randomly all of a sudden. Maybe there are hints that everyone would eventually fall in love with Special Protagonist Boy that I just did not pick up on, and if there were and I picked up on them, then maybe I'd be more open to it, but as it's written, it just doesn't sit right with me. Celine is age of majority and Felix is a cat. So to be 100% transparent and honest about it, it's weird, and I don't like it. According to my post-play research, the party member that trusts Zack the most will get their ending triggered, and if multiple party members tie for having the most trust, then the priority of the endings is Stella to Uriel to Celine to Felix. Increasing or decreasing the party's members' trust comes down to how the player plays. With Zack's harem, increasing an individual's trust and affection is rather simple. Give them presents and select the correct dialogue option when prompted. However, even though the game implies you can buy presents, I was unable to find any shops that sold them. From what I read, it appears that it is significantly easier to obtain presents for the party in New Game Plus. I suppose the developers decided that as a gift to the player for beating the game once already, they could now effectively control what ending they would get by easily increasing or decreasing someone's trust with various gifts. I can only assume that it is therefore New Game Plus where one can buy the presents, but I cannot confirm. But when it comes to the non-story related gameplay, as one would expect from a game with turn-based combat, it can get rather complicated, while at the same time can just be as easy as turn your brain off and just press A kind of game. In combat, there is regular attacks, skill attacks, and magic attacks. In addition, there is also the random chance to miss or get a critical hit, as well as get a limit break. To top that combat off, there is also the trust charge. Furthermore, there is the out-of-combat preparations. Don't worry, I will cover these in detail so the names make sense. Before starting battle, preparation for it is key. Each party member can be equipped with a weapon, armor, and something called a Rubik's. Certain weapons and armor have additional effects, but the Rubik's is where one can control these effects. By finding and inserting jewels into the Rubik's, different things can happen. There are simple jewels that buff an attack, but there are also jewels that will make it so that a regular attack will cause the enemy to be inflicted by a status effect. There are also a few special jewels that range from healing the party member each time it's their turn, or allowing the party member to get an experience point for every step taken in the overworld. But party members cannot be equipped with every jewel under the sun. fun. Each Rubik's is only so large, and the jewels take up room and come in different shapes. Equipping the jewels to a party member then becomes a puzzle. By rotating jewels around, it is possible to fill up the entire Rubik's, but you might not always have the jewels you want to have due to their shapes and size. But if you figure out the self-made puzzle, then you can make your characters pretty powerful. To top the preparations off, there is also the matter of setting up the party formation. On the 3x3 square, characters can be placed wherever, but different positions have different effects. The front column gets an increase in attack power but decrease in defense, then the back column is the opposite of that, and lastly, the middle column is in the middle of the row with zero drawbacks or advantages. Furthermore, certain formations can result in additional effects. I personally preferred the cross boost formation. After all that preparation, then combat can begin. Attacking is just as it sounds like, a regular attack. Unless you run out of resources or have a weapon or jewel that'll give the attack a special effect, attacking regularly is pretty pointless. But it is nice that it is there for when you run out of skill points or magic points. Skill points are used to activate the character's skills. Each character has their own unique skills with various effects. For example, Uriel has a move where she would attack the enemy and the damage dealt would heal the party, or how most of Stella's do extra damage to floating enemies. And since in the mid to late game majority of the enemies float, Stella quickly became my MVP. From what I understood, the strength of these skill attacks is based on the character's strength stat unless the descriptor for the individual move said otherwise. Alternatively, there is also passive skills such as Celine's War Dance that increases everyone's stats except herself, though that as well as some other skills take a lot of skill points. Thankfully, skill points heal between turns, so running out is rarely a worry. Oddly though, the full heals before the bosses do not heal skill points, but they do heal everything else, like magic points. Unlike skills, different magic can be shared between multiple characters, and those who align with certain magic all get the exact same spells. There are 3 kinds of magic: light magic, shadow magic, and void magic. Each character has a natural affinity for a type of magic, like how Zack defaults to using light magic versus how Stella defaults to using shadow magic. Light magic spells are primarily for healing, though there are damaging moves, and shadow magic spells are all offensive, either doing damage or decreasing the enemy's stats. Void magic spells all do damage with a tendency to cause status effects, although I will admit I am a little fuzzy about what's really unique with void magic, since the only one in my party who could use void magic was Celine, and because her physical prowess far exceeds her magical one, the void magic on my party was rather weak. But I know it didn't have to be. There are jewels that allow party members to use magic that they don't have a natural affinity for. For example, Uriel normally can only use shadow magic, but because I equipped her with a light jewel, she was now able to use light magic in addition to her regular shadow magic. One could choose to have a party member who can use light, shadow, and void. With skill and magic attacks, there is a random chance to trigger a limit break. Triggering a limit break means that the character that activated can attack multiple times without draining any resources. While you can choose who you will attack with these multiple attacks before selecting and unleashing them, the target will not switch. I found that when it comes to limit breaks, choosing attacks that attack multiple enemies or attacks randomly is the best way to not waste the break. Unfortunately though, enemies, including bosses, can limit break as well. This is especially unlucky with bosses, since bosses already get 2 turns, which means they could theoretically get 2 limit breaks attacking the party like 12 times in a row. Thankfully, that hypothetical situation never happened to me, but the final boss did get a break on their very first turn, resulting in a game over before I even had a chance to make a move. There is a way to completely cripple bosses though: trust charges. Specifically, Uriel's trust charge. The trust charge is, well, charged by defeating enemies, but fleeing from enemies will decrease it. When the trust charge is fully charged, then one of the party members can unleash their unique trust charge attacks. Both Zack and Celine unleash a powerful attack on the selected enemy. Felix loots every possible item drop from the enemy, Stella heals and increases the stats of every party member, and Uriel does the opposite, decreasing the stats of every enemy and also afflicting every enemy with multiple status conditions. Uriel's trust charge is so broken that when I used it against bosses, the bosses were unable to hit me once during the whole battle. Uriel's trust charge even affects the final boss. Once I realized that, I would build up the trust charge before a boss battle, but not use it unless it was absolutely necessary, so that there would be at least some challenge in the fight. Now, the status effects that one can get afflicted by or give the opponent is paralysis, float, sleep, fever, poison, confusion, and no. Of course, both paralysis and sleep prevent the character from taking their turn. While sleep can wear off after a time, or by taking a hit, paralysis can only be healed by an item or curing spell. Fever and poison cause damage to the one who is afflicted by it each turn until it is healed. Confusion, which is also called charmed, results in the player sometimes assisting the opponent until healed or hit out of it. Basically, if the player tries to heal someone with a confused character, that character will heal the monster instead. Similarly, if the confused character is told to attack, they will attack a fellow party member, or sometimes even themselves instead. Gnome prevents the character from using their skill attacks. Finally, the float status makes the individual float. There are some attacks that cannot hit a floating character, however, there are others that do double damage against someone who is floating. Then, on the enemy side, some will randomly show up in different colors, which signify that that enemy is special. Blue enemies are weaker than the average of their species, and also appear to be smaller. Red enemies are not only larger, but also significantly stronger. Then yellow enemies are considered the leader of their group and give the monsters the same kind of bonuses that a player could get from different formations. However, unlike the formations, when a leader monster is defeated, the special effect goes away too, so it's best to take out those yellow and red ones quickly. Lastly, there is how one gets into battle in the first place. In the open overworld, the battles are triggered by a random encounter. Sometimes either the player or monster will get caught off guard, which will cause the one who is off guard to lose a turn or take extra damage from the first attack, depending on if the opposing group decides to attack right away or not. But random encounters are actually rare. Even without using something to repel enemies, it can take a surprising amount of time to get into battle. Something funny about the open world map is that it isn't really an open world. This is because locations don't always exist. It's not that the location is locked or something, it physically doesn't exist until hitting a specific story beat. For example, when I was exploring the overworld, I found a spot that looked odd, but when I went to investigate, there is nothing there. Not even a tough enemy or something, just a random dead end. However, after getting to the city and having been told about a temple there, when I returned to the exact same spot, a giant unmissable temple was now there. It was odd. Something not odd though is the presentation. I imagine it is because the story is that of a medieval fantasy. It was decided to use high quality pixel art that harkens to the days of old school JRPGs. There were limitations to the pixel art style though. I found that sometimes one would need their imagination to fill in where the animation stopped, but that wasn't a problem in my eyes. I still got to see Felix get thrown around, and I'm rather thankful that I didn't need to see the details of some of those perverted NPCs. I do wish though that there was more character art. There were quite a number of named characters that just did not have profiles, and some of them were pretty important. You'd think Shannon, Livio, or Oliver would have character art, but no. I guess the person who raised the main character, the younger sister of one of the party members, and the mayor's son who plays a big role were not important enough. The weirdest though is that the main antagonist doesn't have any character art. Sure, there's high quality sprites, but when the minions of the main antagonist have character art but not the villain himself, it comes across as rather odd. These characters had fun designs, not just the humans but the monsters too. The wolves were cool, the trees were funny, the berserkers were intimidating, and so on. The barrel pups were the best in my opinion though. Yes, it could be dangerous if one popped out of a barrel unexpectedly, but at least they were cute. I like the backgrounds too, not just the towns and dungeons, but I also like the look and feel on the overworld. However, I found the map to be a little ugly in its presentation. I don't even know why, honestly. It's probably because, unlike the rest of the game, the map feels like it has a lower quality. As a result, I ended up looking at it so little that I even forgot I had a map until the second act of the story reminded me. Then I forgot again because I just didn't want to look at it. Something else that I forgot after the fact is the music. Now, I like the music. It fits the situation. There's one point in the story where the battle music is even playing outside of battle, but the victory music cutting in after battle is a little jarring in that section. Otherwise, the victory jingle can feel like a transition between tracks. But despite the overall praise, this isn't the kind of music that I would actively find myself humming or looking up after the fact. I can remember a few notes without reference, but that's pretty useless in the grand scheme of things. My final thoughts on this game is that the trailer didn't lie. I got almost exactly what I was signing up for. I got the everyday stereotypical classic medieval fantasy tale I was looking for. The world building intrigued me, and even though it was a complete story that doesn't need a sequel because of how the world is built, I can 100% see how one could work. I like the characters. Well, the major characters specifically. There's so much to Zack, the party, and the others who have full art that I didn't get to talk about in my story summary, but really wanted to. The perverts I could live without though. Please remove them. They were gross and did not need to be here. Something else that I feel that did not need to be here is the harem dynamic. I went into this not knowing there there would be a harem dynamic in the party, and I really wasn't a fan of how platonic friendship very suddenly and without warning turned into everyone wanting the only man among them. For people who like harems, then I'm sure this won't come across as a surprise or perhaps welcome, but for those like me who dislike or are indifferent to the majority of harem stories, this is your warning that all the girls fall for the player because of course they do. But if we put all that aside, ignoring the perverted characters in the random harem, then this is a fun story. It is full of typical cliches of the genre coupled with typical plot twists of the genre, and the game doesn't even try to hide the fact that these plot twists are coming. I appreciate that the game was confident enough to follow up on its foreshadowing instead of just randomly pivoting at the last second. Since it answered almost every question it set up, it feels complete. There is one loose string that I wish would have been addressed, and granted, I understand why this plot point, that I can't go into detail about because this is an overall spoiler-free section, is left hanging, and based on how the foreshadowing is written in the game, the hints are there for one to connect the dots on their own. However, it would have been nice to get that confirmation. The presentation was fitting for this type of game. I feel like they could have taken it farther by adding more character art and sprite animations, but what was there served its purpose. The music also served its purpose, and I enjoyed it, but not the most memorable of soundtracks. While the story is typical and the presentation does its job, the gameplay is anything but simple. Now, one could turn the brain off, grind, and then press A, but the game doesn't really reward that. Since the random encounter rate is so low, it's difficult to grind. Secondly, there are so many skills, spells, and jewels and formations to play around with, I don't know why one wouldn't. With all the possible combinations, I enjoy taking my time to think of strategies. Yes, there were some blanket strategies, but they had to be thought of ahead of time. Once those blanket strategies were in my head, then I could execute them without too much thought, but still needed to be aware just in case. There were so many gameplay elements to keep track of, but that just made it fun because of everything that I could try with different characters. I really liked Asdivine Hearts. I could see myself going back and trying that new game plus. Admittedly, even though I liked Asdivine Hearts and can see myself replaying it, I don't like it enough to check out the sequel. While I can see how a sequel could work, since the original story feels pretty complete, it doesn't seem necessary. I believe that if the music was more memorable and the gross perverts were completely removed, then I'd like this game even more than I already do. Granted, the story was very cliche and typical of the setting, so that might be a turn-off for some people. Then again, sometimes you just have the itch for that kind of classic story. Then, even though I keep bringing up the harem dynamic in the story, outside of that, I really like the characters. Of course, like every story, there are some characters that are weaker than others, but overall, they stole the show. Zack and his friends made this generic medieval fantasy story something more memorable. That being said, with Asdivine Hearts being as strong as it is, and being available on literally everything, if you're into classic style turn-based JRPGs, then I can recommend putting this one on your list.